Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Surya Pastricha, and in this video I'm going to talk to Christy Un, who is the co-founder of Genervision House, an NGO localizing and spreading awareness about sustainable development goals in Macau. Christy is an established researcher and a columnist, with some of her works being published in the renowned magazine The Diplomat. Prior to co-founding her NGO with her friend, Christy worked with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, where she created content on refugee-related developments for the largest Syrian refugee camp in the world. In this video, Christy talks about blockchain, funding for social impact ventures, global public policy, and the challenges she faced while scaling her NGO. If you are someone who wants to create value, not just for yourself, but your society and your community, do watch this video till the end. There is definitely gonna be a lot of worldly knowledge and a lot of inspiration packed for you in this one. So let's just jump straight into the conversation and hear out from Christy. Welcome to the podcast, Christy. Thank you so much for joining us. It is really a pleasure hosting you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well and trying to cope with the COVID effects and trying to stay productive. Yeah. How are you?
I'm great as well. And the first time I came across your work at your venture Genervision House, I was like, wow, this is such an amazing thing to be doing. And I also started getting intrigued by this entire social impact venture space. But can you, for all our curious listeners, give us a brief about yourself and what Genervision House is really about and how you started off with this entire idea?
So my name is Christy Un, and I'm a local citizen from Macau. And so back then, about 2 years ago, I was interning in Jordan with UNHCR in the largest Syrian refugee camp in the world. And while I was working there as an external relations intern, producing media and contents related to refugee developments, COVID-19 came and I was in lockdown for a few months, and I had to remake my decisions about where I should be heading to next in life, whether I should be leaving the country and heading back to my home country or not. And it was then that I then hopped on my flight, which I was lucky enough to hop on a flight back home, and I witnessed how COVID-19 has impacted the society at home. And I felt like it's a time for a change. And especially in Macau, the economic sectors are mainly focused on the casino industries and also tourism. And we could see how COVID-19 has impacted these sectors really heavily. And with this in mind, I have co-founded Genervision House with my dear friend, Ariana. And this is an NGO focusing on disseminating information on how to localize sustainable development goals in Macau. And also, while I was working with Genervision House, I have also been working with United Nations University Institute in Macau to work on enhancing the cyber resilience of civil society organizations in Macau and beyond. And with this experience working in a top-down research agenda, as well as like working in bottom-up community work with Genervision House, I have gained more understanding about how sustainable development could be realized in the Macau context.
That is such a heartful and a great thing to be working on, especially in these times of distress where the pandemic has supposedly, been an agent of pushing the vulnerable to the brim. And also, you have worked quite a lot with the vulnerable sections of the society, especially in Macau. So, how do you see that in terms of the lingering inequality, especially amongst those sections where people are unable to access even the most basic resources, be it food, be it education, healthcare? And does it in some way affect the prioritization of SDGs?
So luckily in the Macau society, the government cares about the citizen. They have provided a lot of welfare, ranging from some cash stipend to support civilians to, for example, enhance their consumer demand and also to cope with the economic impacts. And this is a positive development that the government is doing. But at the same time, we see that there is a growing inequality in the society. We could see that, for example, a lot of the workers have been laid off, especially with migrant workers as well, who made up a huge proportion of our working force in our tourism industry, as well as with the hotel industries. And these effects need to be taken into consideration, and how the society or the economy could be diversified in a sustainable manner. And it is with this in mind that we in Genervision House would like to provide more information about how other countries in the world are doing while they cope with COVID-19, how they are transforming their economy, for example, adopting digital technologies to cater for the vulnerable populations in terms of their service deliveries, and also how businesses could be transformed, and how the economy could also be shifted into a greener transition. For example, waste management issues and green finance are one of the main things that Macau should be transitioning towards and make more progress into.
We also faced a similar problem back like last year, when migrants were laid off because a lot of them used to work in construction industries. So COVID-19 majorly affected a lot of migrants and snatched away their livelihoods from them. And also, COVID-19 has been playing its wrath and tremendously ill affecting people, I would say, from all walks of life. But especially when it comes to the vulnerable sections of the society, they have no access to equal resources, equal opportunities. And this pandemic has only widened the gap and made it worse. And also, people have lost their jobs, as we talked about earlier. And a lot of households, unfortunately, have also lost their sole bread earning member as well. And COVID-19, in terms of devastating people and bringing severe misery, has not been short of till date. So I was, to this fact, I was also, reading this book called The Sapiens, which talks about how inequality dates back to the Stone Age, and also how groups are increasingly monopolizing the fruits of globalization and thus leaving billions behind, which was honestly a new and an interesting revelation for me. Uh, and since almost everything has gone online due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and you have been working quite a lot in the area of international relations and public policy. So, what is your take on global diplomacy in the virtual world, and how does it play out, especially at a micro or an NGO level?
So we could see that, as I have just mentioned, COVID-19 is a time where a lot of businesses and communities have shifted towards a digital transformation. And we could also see that governments have been very wary about, for example, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, and also how digital technologies play a very important role to keep the society intact and functioning. And so with this in mind, we have seen that normally the narrative is focusing on securing the government's cybersecurity, or the businesses' cybersecurity, but civil society or civilians have been neglected. And also how, for example, we could see that students who came back from abroad, which constitute around half of the population in Macau, actually, and they came back having struggled to continue remote education, because there is a lack of public space for discussions and also learning virtually. For example, in Macau, there are a lot of construction works happening every day, and they happen in times that are out of everyone's expectations. And also the public internet could be not really functioning adequately during times that are very needed. So we could see that civilians and also civil society are under prioritized during COVID-19. And it is in this time that digital technology also play a very important role for them to continue to, whether it's education, to continue to learn or to continue to operate their businesses. So globally, I think that governments should be taking more consideration into how to enhance civil society and civilian internet access and cybersecurity.
That's really interesting for me. And also, I was, going through your op-ed and articles in the Diplomat and Global. And what really piqued my interest was the way in which you talked about building citizen-centric cyber resilience. So, can you, for our listeners, talk a bit about what citizen-centric cyber resilience is, and essentially what is meant by cyber resilience in general?
So cyber resilience is the ability to be able to adapt to and also become more resilient after some adverse cyber events that an individual or an entity has encountered. And this requires not just the technological side of things, for example, like updating your software or buying new antivirus softwares, for example, but it also requires civilians to have the awareness and knowledge about how to cope with these cyber attacks and also the vulnerabilities that they would be faced. Would be facing. And so by citizen-centric cyber resilience, this means that governments and also software developers should be thinking in the should be thinking with the mental models or thought processes of civilians, like how would they perceive certain cyber attacks like phishing emails, for example, which normally a lot of citizens would be very vulnerable to, because they would not be able to identify which email is authentic or which one is really trying to people are trying to scam you, for example. So by citizen-centric, even not just cyber resilience, with everything in the society, all kinds of development, it should think and begin with the starting point of civilians as a focus.
Yeah, and also since you talked a lot about how technology is going to impact and how resilience needs to be, more strengthened in the times to come. We are soon going to encounter a new era of high-end technology where artificial intelligence, cyber physical systems, blockchain, and cloud computing would essentially operate. So, do you think citizens and people need to be made more aware about this entire concept of cyber resilience? And how can we move one step ahead to achieve this goal?
Definitely, a civilian should be more aware about these developments because they have been increasingly affecting their daily lives. And recently, one of the reports that I have read about, which makes me very intrigued and find it very relevant, is the World Development Report by the World Bank on how data could be used to improve the lives of civilians, especially those from low and middle income countries. So a digital social contract would require value, equity, and trust in data. And it is very important that civilians could also be made to trust using technologies and how these technologies could also benefit them. So with, for example, blockchain technologies, it secures people's data, but then people should also know that how privacy and ethics and how technologies could all interplay. in the sense that there would be trade-offs, for example, between security and privacy or accountability. And secondly, technologies such as AI and blockchain really could benefit vulnerable populations if they really pursue the purpose of empowering civilian populations, and also trying to balance all the trade-offs that I have just previously mentioned. So, for example, with my previous experience working in Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan, it would be surprising for outsiders to know that actually refugees have benefited a lot from blockchain technology. For example, in supermarkets, to avoid overcrowding and also to allow refugees to have the dignity to make their own choices and buy food products, there is an iris scan technology that makes use of blockchain technology. By scanning the iris, the iris of refugees, payments could be very directly processed, and they could also exercise their choice of buying products, and their biometric data would be saved very securely. So these technologies could really empower citizens, but they should be put into good use.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to us, it's up to the governments, it's up to the civil society of how they want to use these technologies, whether they want to use it for the good or for the bad. So it's really up to us as a community. And
Yeah.
yeah, and also, from my experiences and understanding of how public policy is formed. So I was, in my back in my college days, I read this subject about public policy. So they described three different pillars of public policy. So the first one was the public level, in which you need to, accommodate the interests of the public. But there's also this macro level, which accommodates basically the nation's interest, the country's interest towards some particular issues. So for example, if we are talking about cyber policy, or maybe we are talking about technology, so it basically accommodates that. And then there's also an interface level where the public and the macro level interact with each other. And I also read that there is always a pyramid kind of structure for social ventures. So, and also there should be a bottom up approach to implementation of these policy processes. So for the policy process should start at the bottom of the society, so it should accommodate all the ground level workers, the street level workers as they call it. And they should include the teachers, the doctors, and all the ground level NGOs, for example. So that provides a really cohesive way of initiating the policy structure and actually carrying out tasks effectively. So that was really interesting for me, and I really enjoyed going through that subject. So let's just now move on to some questions about your NGO, since we have talked so much about global diplomacy, cybersecurity, sustainable development goals, and all of that. So it would be really great if you can, tell us more about the structure of a social impact venture, how it operates, how it is different from a for-profit venture from your experience, and how do you manage external funding and recommendations from local agencies, especially in this period of the pandemic.
So to continue with the discussion that you have just mentioned about public policy, actually bottom-up civil society work is also very important to keep public policies moving. So with a book that I have recently read called Mission Economy, it highlights the point really well by saying that it's not just the public sector and the private sector, but also the third sector and civilian participation. All of them, they are elements that are important to make SDGs happen, and also sustainable development. And with the NGO that I have been working in, Genervision House, we have started it half a year ago, and it is really challenging because especially in COVID-19 times, it is especially hard to obtain funding and also to have and also to mobilize youth or volunteers who would be devoted to the cause when there are already a lot of economic concerns that they should be thinking of. So with this in mind, we have been working really hard to try to make sustainable development goals approachable to the society in general. So, for example, we have created a lot of social media content on our Facebook, WeChat, and Instagram, touching on sustainable developments around the world, and also how these ideas could be localized in the Macau context, whether it's like recycling or whether it's economic diversification, for example. And by producing videos, daily social media content, monthly newsletters with only a team of 10 core members, actually. Some of them are working virtually. So we have been working really hard, and now we have also obtained the interest of certain section of the society, and it's expanding. And we have also obtained our first official funding from an international enterprise in the plastic bag levy award ceremony, where enterprises, they would offer money collected from plastic levy to NGOs, which could be making an impact locally. So we are very grateful of this, and we would still like to continue and work hard and try to obtain more funding and partnerships with enterprises, and improve on the corporate social responsibility side of things, and also improve the awareness and understanding of sustainable development goals for them to be achieved by 2030, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we achieve those in the near future. And that's really commendable that you got funding and all of that. And I can certainly relate. I can certainly relate to the hard work involved in putting up an entire venture together, especially a social impact venture. And I'm sure that there must be certain challenges which you must have faced in terms of getting grants, communication challenges, and whatnot. And you also talked about your social media journey, how you put up newsletters, put up videos for communicating all of the ideas which you had in your mind at that time. So, how did you basically overcome all the challenges which you faced? Was it a bit difficult for you, or did you get over them quite easily? How was that experience?
It actually, it is very challenging but very rewarding at the same time, because I have been working with my full-time job, and I'm also working with my own NGO. So I've been balancing my work-life balance and work-work balance. So but I really do believe that it is teamwork that has driven the organization so far to the point that we are reaching today. And I'm very grateful to have met like-minded people and youth who would want to also realize this cause to localize sustainable development in Macau. And I think it is, as I said, teamwork is very important, and every one of us brings different strengths. And so even with our virtual members, we try to include them in the work that we do. For example, we would host like a book discussion webinars to engage the local audience virtually. And also for on-site team members, we would do activities which happens on average monthly. And in this way, we could engage with the locals, and also trying to forge a sense of community, so that they won't feel that, oh, sustainable development is something that is which is a concept that is very far away. So it makes them feel like, oh, by having discussions and also like having a community of people who cares about the same cause, we could be working on this together.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a way out, and there's always some other way to, keep your team engaged, keep yourself engaged so that you can perform your task effectively at the venture you are trying to build or you have already built. So, and
Mhm.
yeah, and somewhere deep down, I personally believe that challenges are a part and parcel of life, and you need to believe in yourself, in your team, stay true to yourself, work harder, and eventually you will start reaching new heights. So that is that one mantra which I abide by, and I try to, abide by those mantras in the daily tasks which I carry out. So that has been kept me going since the past like 1 years or so, because earlier when we used to have physical classes in college, and I graduated recently, but it's really hard to, it's really hard to cope up online, because you don't get to meet your friends, you don't get to meet your teachers. So there's a loss in, personal connection, which the online space can't really fulfill until virtual reality is developed or something like that,
Yeah,
where
definitely. And I think it is a really difficult time for everyone. And to be in a country or in a geographical region which is relative more safe from these COVID-19 effects is really a very privileged thing. And I'm grateful that in Macau, the situation is quite peaceful and stable, so we could be able to do some on-site events. And yeah.
I mean, in our country it's still going on virtually, because there are a lot of cases increasing day by day, and
Yeah.
population is too much, so we can't keep control of everything. You can't stop everyone from going out. So
Yeah, definitely.
it's a really hard. And actually our university opened back in the day, but it closed after 10 or 15 days, and since
Mm.
within a year it has been closed. I have not been to my university since a year.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. It is really difficult. I have heard from some of my friends, they have also been going through the same thing. And it is really not easy to have like the most exciting part of your life, for example, university life, to be, yeah, totally different from what you have been imagining.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I'm sure you must be having some amazing plans for the future for your venture, Genervision House. So, what are some of those? And also, what is that one advice you would like to give your future self? And especially to people who are passionate about starting their own social impact venture.
Mhm. Um, so in the future, things are still evolving, and as I have just previously mentioned, we would like to engage more with enterprises and corporates so that we could incorporate corporate social responsibility and also the general understandings of sustainable development goals in Macau, and share them with these entities. And also we have been internally, we have been conducting a research on the situation of sustainable development goals in Macau, because this data is lacking, just as how this data is also lacking globally and regionally. So we have been conducting literature review, and we're also planning to conduct some stakeholder interviews and collaborate with yeah, private sector and hopefully also public sector in the future, so that we can, yeah, bring more of these ideas and understanding together and also forge a cross-sectoral collaboration. And also we would like to host some summit or discussion workshops where we could further promote these ideas and make yeah, make some to inform some policy change if possible. And one thing also about what I would tell others when they want to start their social ventures. Actually, with Genervision House, it was never really a thing I would have expected in the beginning. Like I was just having this idea with my friend, and we've been talking about it during our quarantine times in the hotel when we just got back to Macau, and we're like, oh, this is a time that is really in need of changing, and we see opportunities and challenges. So my advice would be, never be fearful about what might be coming next, because things could happen one step at a time and in a pace that you would never be imagining. If you asked me half a year ago, I would never have imagined we could have started an NGO and managed to obtain our first funding in this difficult time. So if you have an idea, just go for it. And if you are passionate about the cause, it will bring you further to any path that you would want in the future.
So basically, I also believe in this concept of incremental learnings. So I believe that you should always strive to learn and keep on trying new things, because if you keep on trying new things, you will actually find what you're truly passionate about. So in the past year, individuals like myself, like my college friends, and myself, got to experiment with a lot of things. I did research internships. I also did some entrepreneurial boot camps. So I really got to experiment with things, and I also truly found my passion. So I think it's really important to keep striving, keep working harder, and just believe in yourself, and you can do it if you believe in yourself. So that's the true mantra I abide by. And also, we generally ask our guests to leave us with some parting advice. So would you like to share any words of wisdom, and what would they be?
I think we have quite a similar idea about how we should strive for our passion and things that we truly believe in. And I believe that the world is very interconnected. And one thing that might seem to have happened and made you feel like, oh, this is bad. But if you look back a few years later on it, you might think that that is actually a good thing that has pushed you to the point that uh, you are doing these things today, and all the dots they would connect. And so my parting words would be that never feel too self-defeated if things don't appear to be what you're expecting, because you won't know what would be happening next, and it might bring you further to a position closer to realizing your goals and dreams. For example, when I was in lockdown in Jordan and I had to end my internship prematurely, I thought to myself, okay, so what's next? And also, okay, so I'm heading back home. I would think of what my future life plan would be, and nothing is certain. But then when I went back, and I know that something has to be changed, and I have a belief that this could happen. And when it happened, things will keep rolling. So I think it is challenges will come, but you could also find opportunities in them. Yeah.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I also believe that the most important thing is to stay curious and to learn from others. Since once you are curious and willing to learn through stories of various people, you eventually start exploring new things and eventually find your way to thrive. So that's really a commendable and a valuable advice which you gave out here. And yeah, I hope a lot of people soon get to hear about your journey through this podcast, so that it can, go on to inspire a lot of people, and especially the youth. Also, I'm sure the journey you embarked on must have given you a lot of learnings and lessons for the future. But sadly, this unfortunately, brings us to the end of this podcast. Thanks a lot, Christy. I truly appreciate you sharing your journey and the plethora of experiences you had with our listeners. Thank you so much for taking out the time for being here, and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be speaking with you on these matters.
Thanks a lot.